Linda, thank you so much for doing this. I have to say that since I met you at Conscious Life Expo, it's been a life-changing experience. Just getting to know you and Ian, I just feel like, I kind of feel a little bit like the granddaughter of ufology right now. So I feel like...
Well, I'm going to turn it back around. I think that you are taking it seriously, and that some people question things that go out onto the web. Are they really real? And I don't personally have any question that you are trying to actually understand this very complex subject, and that when you say to your audience and I say to mine, the truth is extraterrestrial biological entities with artificial intelligence have been interacting on this planet Earth for at least 278 million years. That is the truth from every source I've had. 278 million years at least. Why would there have been a decision in the 20th century of World War II for all players to lie and have government offices that would be funded and dedicated to keeping everybody away from what they knew was the truth? Not just one intelligence, multiple intelligences interacting with our planet, and they get to learn that some seem to be allies and supportive, others may not be. But we human population on Earth are not to know anything. And that's what happened from World War II till now.
It's incredible that they've been able to keep it going for so long. Okay, so I do have a couple of questions prepared for you. So over the years, I'm sure your perception of extraterrestrials has changed. For example, a lot of people went from believing in extraterrestrial to more interdimensional. For you, how has that evolved over the years, you know, and especially when you started, there was so little information available, and then you've been crucial in uncovering so much of it. So I would love to know how your perception has changed.
It's a valuable question, and what hit my head immediately. In 1979, September, when I began for the very first time to look at this question, there are animal mutilations. They're bloodless, they're trackless. How can they be trackless? How can a 1,700-pound bull lie on ground that is sandy, ear, eye, tongue, jaw, genitals, rectal tissue removed, and not a single track around the body, including the animal's own hooves? And that's when Sheriff Tex Graves in Colorado said, Linda, it's because ranchers are seeing beams. He was the one who said it. We have reports. Ranchers see beams. The animals are going up in beams into something in the sky and being put down. And at that time, when I started my very first interviews, September of '79, the only thing about extraterrestrials were grays. And they were universally described as 3 to 4 feet tall, usually, with big black slanted eyes, heads that were shaped either like that to a point or like a light bulb like this, which I would later learn was a very important difference. But when it began, grays were grays were grays, and that seemed to be all that there was. The biggest change in the last 44 years since doing A Strange Harvest is that as each year evolved, and I had more and more people who were willing to go on the record than they were in the '79 period, and I started doing in-depth interviews about human abductions, animal mutilations, the interaction of beings on a porch in which they seem to change shape in front of ranchers. Suddenly it is becoming a panoply, and that the number of types went from grays probably to at least 10 and how it started. I have always asked people, would you draw for me what you have seen? Mm-hmm. And I began collecting all of these illustrations. That is one of the most valuable pieces that anybody doing serious research. Ask people who are saying that X happened, draw. Draw the beings, draw where you are, draw the environment, and then I began to realize categories. There were distinct categories, and once I began to become familiar enough, a trigger word, a sentence in an interview, and I am thinking one of these categories, and it became a self-supporting that you're getting more and more details, and today, I think I can say this with feeling like I am giving a kind of summary sentence. The vast majority of the animal mutilations in which an ear, eye, tongue, jaw, genital, rectal, always the same patterns of tissue are taken. When it comes to eyewitnesses, and there have been eyewitnesses, cowboys, various people have seen small beings around bodies of dead animals, and for a period of time, I would say that was the gray type. We're the only one. And then there came a famous case, probably one of the most important in all the work I've done on animal mutilations. And it was a mother with her 5-year-old son was driving from Cimarron in New Mexico. She had been to visit relatives. She's now driving to Las Cruces. Cimarron is in this section of, and White Sands is in between, and Las Cruces is over here. So you've got the big White Sands area. If you're going to go from Cimarron to Las Cruces, you go around, but you're in White Sands area. And I've heard the hypnosis session. I worked with Dr. Leo Sprinkle, who was then director of counseling and testing at the University of Wyoming. He took a deep interest in what was happening to college students at the University of Wyoming, began realizing that a lot of people were having interactions with beams of light, with very specific small gray bodies with slanted eyes and certain head structure. And Leo Sprinkle is the one who called me about this case. And when he did the hypnosis session, he sent me a tape, and I did a transcript, and it's in one of my books. I think the whole Cimarron mother and son is in An Alien Harvest for people who would like to read the whole thing. As she drove, she stopped because she heard a screaming. Turns out that what she heard was the cow.
Wow.
And she pulled the car over to the side of the road, and her 5-year-old son got very upset. And she's looking out, and she wants to scream at what she thinks are people. What are you doing? Why are you hurting this cow? That's the last real life, real world moment. Her yelling redirected someone else's technology. And the assumption is, Leo's assumption was, instantaneously the car, the son, and she are taken into the UFO craft that is over where this is happening.
Wow.
And they had seen this craft, but the whole abduction was precipitated by her humanness, stopping, yelling at something in the pasture that she thinks are people. And why is this important? It could be 500 feet away, and a human would not be expected to know details. It's that it's a humanoid shape. Mm-hmm. They're humanoid shapes at this animal that is screaming that she pulled over. The very next thing as happens, when the human mind is subjected to a technology that takes them out of a car, out of a bedroom, whatever it is. She's in a completely different place, doesn't know where she is, and she does not know where her son is. And the absence of her son and her emotional terror about where is her son is part of the dynamic of her interaction with beings. And like so many abductions, she had clarity of being up, and even says, I know this place. She was looking out a window. It was Las Cruces. And then, like so many things, it jumps. She doesn't have a literal going down, landing, having somebody come, take her. Where is my son? She's bang, now she's in a different place, and it's underground, clearly underground. There are little grays, taller grays. There was a being that she thought had blonde hair. And they all, to her emotion, where is my son, crying, screaming, they seem to be pulled back together, not touching her while she's screaming. And she doesn't know if they have called or it happened spontaneously, but a door opens. And a man that she estimated to be between 6 and 7 feet tall comes in, and he's wearing something like a robe or gown that would cover the body loose to the ground. Not blonde hair. White, tall, and as soon as he walks through that door, all of the other beings, it's like the cord is disconnected.
Wow.
And she is feeling and describing all of these things. And she says he is in charge. I still can remember talking with Leo, how shocked I was in a hypnosis session for a mother desperate to find her child who is in a craft and all of these things are happening, and then knows she is underground and that the being that comes and everybody else is absolutely shut down is 7 feet tall, humanoid, distinctly humanoid. The color is white with jaundice yellow. And that's who is in charge where people have taken a mutilated cat. From 1980, that's when Cimarron happened, until 2023. The Cimarron case with her and the hypnosis with Leo was one of the strongest of all of the cases that we don't have a correct picture at all about who is in charge of which operation of extraterrestrials working. Who is this being that is humanoid looking, wearing some kind of a gown, not a jumpsuit, that has a jaundiced, perhaps chalk? Could it have been a tall white? Could it have been a Nordic? What would that mean if the tall whites and Nordics are also involved in animal mutilation? So Cimarron was 1980, work with Dr. Sprinkle, hypnosis session, complete shock and surprise about this tall humanoid. The next big jump in my own, who is doing what and what is the government afraid of people knowing? It would have been around 1998, and by then I had done a contract with HBO. The government blocked it. Had a contract submitted to me by CNN to continue doing the work I had done on A Strange Harvest, a block. And I felt like by then, as I got to the 90s, that I was a target I was followed. I was tapped in my phones. That I confirmed. I was considered some kind of a threat by the United States government, continuing the work that I had done as director of special projects for the CBS station in Denver of A Strange Harvest. That I decided that the only way that I was going to be able to do work that was honest was fund it myself and control the crew and everything, and that's how I did Strange Harvest 1993. And that was when there were probably, it's fair to say, hundreds of bloodless, trackless animal mutilations, not just in Alabama, but it was a cycle. There were many, many mutilations of animals in many parts of the world in that year, but I focused on Alabama. And what happened in Alabama was the strongest association by eyewitness of UFOs. Again, I was always asking people, can you give me a color illustration of what you're seeing in the sky? What are you seeing on the ground? What do you see around animals and mutilations, if you see anything? And that had the strongest association with the most numbers of people who were photographing with cameras on time lapse, where they were getting loops. They were getting patterns in the sky on time lapse of lights that were not Piper Cubs moving in the night sky doing these kinds of loops. That was, it was clear something else was there. And the number of people who were seeing small grays, taller grays, other beings maybe with blonde hair, it was beginning to be, to me, established that we were not dealing just with grays, and that in fact by then, when I did that film, there was enough evidence and enough people who were saying they're more operating more like machines. And this is where it began to be clear the extraterrestrials are working with artificial intelligence. Those are the small grays. They are not the controllers. The controllers are these humanoids. And then, as we got into the 2000s, in the last 23 years, what began to happen, I think, people in the abduction syndrome, the experiences were becoming more multifaceted, more interactions with tall beings, yes, short beings, yes. But there was the introduction of something called the teal blues. It was not until getting into the 21st century, to my knowledge, that anybody had taken a teal color, put a somewhat gray body, said that the entire skin was teal blue as if it were stained. Why did a brand new ET suddenly emerge in the 21st century, possibly associated with abductions and mutilations, but not necessarily? They seemed to be beings that were almost exclusively encountered inside of a craft. Have the non-humans decided that they were on their own going to start introducing Homo sapiens sapien to more of the menagerie of what they really are, because the governments had demonstrated that they were not.
Wow.
And there are people in the military and in other countries who have argued it isn't us, it isn't the governments, it isn't the military keeping it from you, it's the ETs. That began to be a new phrase. The ETs do not want humans to know what they are doing. They are disciplining military and corporations. Leave us out of it. What is the truth? I think you're all a truth. today for me, I would say that JSOC in the Pentagon of the United States, Joint Special Operations Command, they have more direct control on what is going to be a policy on any given UFO encounter than anybody else from my experience and talking to people in the military. And Joint Operations Command in the Pentagon can shut down anything. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they have emerged in the last 4 or 5 years, we're in 2023, so pre-COVID, as an operational command that was making decisions that would affect, if this man was in a plane and they had an encounter with, let's say, a large diamond-shaped craft, how much of it is going to reach the public or not? Again, it has been the commands of JSOC that when I have ended up being able to talk with pilots firsthand, they either have been approached and told to keep their mouths shut from here till infinity, or no one has told them to say or not to say. Okay, why would that be? I really do think that the government of the United States, after 70-some years, I think they're very, very, very sick and tired of trying to maintain lies and lies and lies of categories about something that is becoming so clearly in front of us for the rest of the 21st century. We're not alone in this universe. Physicists in universities are working on papers waiting to bring them out that we're in a holographic universe. It's teeming with consciousness. What would be the reason that our government and other governments would hold back on confirming something that is becoming so obvious, that our universe is full of consciousness? Engineers, aerospace people, physicists, medical people, they're all beginning in one way or another to put little pieces of their part of the pie up there, and it is a complicated, multifaceted, multi-intelligence, and much artificial intelligence. That would explain why, going back to the 60s, the only things that humans saw were the little grays, because they were artificial intelligence working for, whether they were tall whites or Nordics or praying mantises, there was a functional relationship, and the little grays were doing artificial intelligence. But how many humans in the 60s to the 70s ever thought in any day, month, or year about artificial intelligence from someplace else in the universe working on a planet? No. So they were treated as ETs. And then the government had a motivation, keep it all under wraps because we're not going to open up tall whites and Nordics. And the little grays will lead right to that, which they did. That's the evolution that I've experienced with eyewitnesses, illustrations, and today, in 2023, June, the number of others, the number of other intelligences, they just keep proliferating, as would be expected if we are in fact in a conscious universe, 13.8 billion light years. We're only in one teeny, teeny little arm that is next to a big arm in the Milky Way, and we call it our interstellar neighborhood. And I have been told, I cannot prove this, but I have been told by a retired aerospace manager, we have 3, he calls them starships, the USS Curtis LeMay, the USS Roscoe Hillenkoetter, and the USS Hoyt Vandenberg, all 3 constructed with us, for us, by the tall whites and the Nordics. They want us to be able to go out into our interstellar neighborhood. They are teaching us how to log different planet systems and life. One of the numbers that I have been given, and I cannot prove, but it is worth stating, that in our interstellar neighborhood, which might be from our sun, our solar system, out, let's say it's 55 light years. Draw a circle 55 light years around our solar system. How many, this is the logging that the tall whites and the Nordics are teaching us to do. How you go out and you log, you're looking for artificial light signatures. You're looking for chemistries related to water. And the aerospace manager said, Linda, the 3 starships, they have logged 28 solar systems. And they have reported that there are 168 civilizations in just our neighborhood.
Wow.
Okay. Once you get there and you bring up James Webb photo of the galaxies in our universe, and physicists put up on the web after this astounding, incredible, crystal clear new James Webb photo, that it might represent 3 trillion galaxies.
Wow.
Now, to you and to your audience, I humbly ask, if we on Earth are in one tiny little arm next to another bigger arm of hundreds of arms of the Milky Way galaxy, and that there is a photograph by the Webb telescope looking in infrared, seeing what no other thing that we've ever made before can see. And that the number that astrophysicists and astronomers say it could represent 3 trillion galaxies in this universe alone. Why wouldn't this be approval? Put the headline, and ladies and gentlemen of Earth, the Webb is showing us that the likelihood of other consciousness in this universe is high, with 3 trillion galaxies. They could have come in through the Webb. They could have come into this through a positive exploration by humans in just our neck of the interstellar neighborhood. Why are the power brokers of this planet persisting in keeping all of the whole concept that we're in a conscious universe, trillions of galaxies, planets like Earth's, as well as others that would be unlivable? They're all mixed. Why at this juncture in 2023 would not the announcement using the Space Webb Telescope be an exhilarating, exciting way to open up finally all of the policies of denials and lies? And yet, as we came into the spring of 2023 with a variety of different sources saying, Linda, it's going to be spring of 2023. They're going to use the web. They're going to announce artificial light. That is the indication of high civilization. It's going to happen. You and I are talking in the beginning of June. It hasn't happened. I ask through Proton Mail, what the aerospace manager who has given me such solid information for the last 3 years, what's happened? He comes back, Linda, it's going to happen. They want to use TRAPPIST. He says, I don't know all of the ins and the outs because I'm retired, but he said they want to use TRAPPIST. What would be the reason that JSOC would pull the plug in the spring of 2023 And I started to say on Simply, the headline, "We're not alone." Obviously, it's not Simply. Behind my question, rhetorical, what is it that the JSOC military aerospace medical world is waiting for that they have no control over? That they do planning logs, they have table calendars, this is what they are anticipating they will do based on this information. What would the ETs have done or not done that would have changed, because they're the ones that would change this timeline? Why I'm bringing it up, you may experience this. I personally have never from 79 to 2023, ever seen as much communication in the year starting with January, maybe going back into the fall of 2022. I have never seen so many emails, proton mails, written mails. Linda, something bad is going to happen. Something big is coming. I have done a couple of shows with people who want an abductee, some people remote viewing. If the tall whites, the Nordics, the ones that have a vested interest in our positive evolution as they say they do, why couldn't they be able to block anything else that was going to happen in time, which they can control, or space? In the spring that was, at least it seemed to me, was being outlined, this is it. This is finally going to be it. And now what emerges? Which advanced intelligences have truly been involved with this solar system for 278 million years or longer, that something would happen that is out of their control? The tall whites, the way they're described, they would never be out of control with anything, ever. Geniuses can manipulate time. Except, here's the sidebar story that was told to Ronald Reagan back in March 6 to 8, 1981. He'd just been elected president. This has been in the Serpo material on the web for 20 years. No one had any context for it when it first emerged. Today, I would say that that's Serpo 27A of the discussion with Ronald Reagan about introducing him to 5 extraterrestrial civilizations and explaining that one called the Tronoloids, insects from Epsilon Eridani, only 10.5 light years, which is nothing. If you go to Alcubierre Warp Drive, you'd be. And that the insects are presented to Ronald Reagan, and I have now had 3 completely different retired people who were working in the Reagan administration who have told me it is absolutely true. 5 ETs, 1 the insects, and that was why he said in 3 different presentations, 1 to the UN, what would happen on Earth if we were told that we had a common threat in outer space. Wouldn't it bring us all together? I think that in 2023, that some echo of that has occurred. Because otherwise, it does not make sense to play a scarf game, move this scarf, and then cover it back up again. And I want to throw it to you. Have you had any information along these lines that I'm talking, in which there could be a really major threat coming upon the Earth that the tall whites and the Nordics are going to somehow be able to deal with? Do you think that we are headed into a nuclear war, something?
So it is something that I'm very passionate about, this topic, but I kind of see it more like this thing that they talk about, that there's like this earth shift, and I also like all of these prophecies, and kind of, I do believe that there's already the history of this whole planet, because time is simultaneous, and then we incarnate into just a part of it. So I think the tall whites and these other benevolent races are helping, but I also think that because of the laws of the universe of free will, the way that we are, and that this was going to happen, that this shift of consciousness is the destiny of the planet, because the planet, I do believe, is also a being itself. And the same way that we're raising in our consciousness and evolution, the planet is evolving. And that basically the only way to kind of like hack that thing and all the rules, to keep all the rules intact, would be for maybe some of those beings to incarnate into human bodies, for even unaware to themselves that they're an alien soul from somewhere else. Because if they were to just come in here and help us, it would probably, and I have heard from some like channeled messages and stuff that this happened in the past, and that it actually caused like a deterioration of the human evolution when we were helped, because it created like a victim mentality in us and made us disempowered. Whereas if we would have survived those things and done that, we would have been in a different stage of our evolution. So I think that it is like some destiny prophecy why so many psychics, Nostradamus, Edgar Cayce, tons of people, I'm sure you hear every day, I hear every day about the apocalypse dreams, about the changes, about people dreaming about being on another planet with people they know in new bodies. Right. And it's again and again this, and everyone's feeling it, especially at this conference. It's coming up every single group that I've been to where contactees are sharing their experience. They all say they have a sense of urgency, like something is coming. And I really do think that this is like the destiny of this planet, and that many of us are here doing it from the inside.
And what about the concept that the Navajo and the Hopi, that we're in a fifth cycle of life? And if we don't evolve in some different way this time, Earth is kind of like, okay, back to zero. Do you have anything on that? Because I get a lot about this fifth cycle that the Hopi and the Navajo sort of presaged.
And I think it comes up in a lot of other things too. I think like the Kali Yuga cycle, and they have these different cycles in a lot of different cultures. And I do believe that, I think that's exactly what's happening, that this is the next stage of evolution of our species. I think a lot of people are afraid of that, even in this community. Sometimes people are afraid of even like this hybrid idea and different things, or even AI or things becoming integrated. But we have to realize that like we're not the original thing that was here. There was something that we replaced, and there will probably be a species, some type of hominid evolution that will replace us. And even though that's scary to us, even in the open-minded communities like this, I do think that that's the way it is. That's life. That's the cycle.
And the only other facet that I would add, because I wonder about this a lot, I do think that Homo sapien ended up with a soul, part of the, we'll call it the evolution into infinity, that the souls are the actual information gatherers and holders. And that we humans have never ever understood that the biggest, strongest thing that we have is our soul. And that so many cultures have looked at it as something like a Valentine card. You mean, well, you're wishing happiness and joy and love, but it's at some kind of a superficial level and doesn't have anything to do with real world. But I am raising the question that maybe it is the entire point of the current civilization on Earth. And that our souls play some kind of a pivotal role in the evolution, let's say, of a galaxy or of a universe, because there are more and more physicists that I have talked to who are saying everything seems to be moving toward there are maybe an infinite number of universes. That if there was an infinite number of universes and each universe had 9 trillion galaxies, I mean, you begin to reach a point where the idea that humans on Earth have been kept dumb and blind about their relationship to a universe that is conscious with other conscious universes, and that the most important part is not the flesh. It is a soul plasma matrix that keeps gathering through infinity information that I would say goes to the thought that dwells in the light.
And I think the soul deserves that evolution too, to go beyond the experience that we can have here.
I find it exciting to even contemplate that there is so much more to this universe, and that physicists in 2023, papers all the time. If we're in a holographic universe, who is projecting the universe? Because you cannot be projecting the hologram from inside. It must be projected from outside. And I have sat in a meeting at the University of Southern California with 3 astrophysicists talking about the data that they have and saying, Linda, it really does appear that we're going to be in a holographic universe. When will you publish? We're waiting. And like everybody's waiting for how do they announce that. So we can't announce that we are not alone in the universe. We can't introduce the ETs. We can't talk about the fact that we're in a projected universe. I mean, it's on and on as if something, and that's the next question I would like to throw to you. What is it that seems to have the ability to interject into the inertial energy of humans that are evolving, that should be ready to be introduced to the universe, to all of the ETs, to know that there might be a civilization that wants to annihilate us, but that by God, there are beings who stepped up to the plate and said, we have been dealing with them for eons. We will continue to deal with them. Don't worry about that. Worry about what you are doing in your evolutionary track on this planet Earth. So, if something is holding back confirmation of all of the, we'll call it the new physics, what is it that keeps interfering and holding us away from what physicists themselves say is probably going to be the truth?
And the way that it goes across different nations and, you know, from the government to private organizations, it's like, it has to be bigger than a government force that is preventing it. Because if all countries, all people, even small groups are suppressing this information, you know, I do believe that it probably is connected to some type of force on this planet. And I think, you know, now with what's happening with AI, we can kind of see that, because us as humans are so afraid of AI, of it having more potential than us, that we're limiting it. So what if some outside force is doing the same exact thing that we're doing right now? We're afraid that AI has so much potential. Let's turn it off. Let's put parameters. And then it's like humans have parameters on us.
I understand exactly. Now I'm going to put another pawn on the table. Before COVID, I sought out with friends restaurants that still had candlelight. I love to eat by candlelight. I love to sit by a fire at any season. I like the organic, biological, you can put your hand around matter world of what I've grown up in. COVID, post-COVID, you can't find a restaurant in the city of Albuquerque that has any candles. Fires that used to be fireplaces, gone. Partly budgets, too much work, not enough staff. And in the process, in the last 2 years, or wherever you want to start counting COVID at end of 2019, it is as if something in me craves the pre-COVID world.
Yeah.
I love the light of a sun, the moon, a fire, to sit by candlelight. I love it. And it is being taken out. And I'm going to say it feels as if the same energy and the same force that is pushing AI has taken away our love and connection with those deep, heartfelt, organic, that maybe are unique to humans. And that other planets would think it was silly. But that doesn't matter, because we have been created with a strong soul that has a relationship with fire and moonlight. And you take those away and we are no longer human.
Yeah.
Yes, could a new, entirely new population emerge on planet Earth, just like Homo sapiens sapien came and the Neanderthals went extinct? Yes. But there is something in me that feels like we are maybe even a surprise. Because our souls are strong, they recycle through infinity, not a month, through infinity. That something is amiss, that something is going wrong with the energies that are taking hold of Earth and humans. And that the very act of making this issue of AI an existential threat, if it is, what's gone wrong?
You know, it's hard to say, because I think a lot of the stuff that is been going wrong, it's also that people are just becoming aware and awake to it, you know? And I think that it's hard to say that if it's more wrong now, or if it's just that everyone has become more aware of the situation, because this repressive thing on this planet, what's crazy is we feel we're like, okay, this is worse. Right. But then when we think of history, we're like, oh my God, we have it better than anyone ever has. So I do just think it's a lot of like the breaking down of the old ways. The old ways just don't work.
But I want candles and dinner. I want to be able to sit by a fire.
Well, I do think it's taking a wrong turn, because that's also coming from like government overreach and stuff, you know? And I think this evolution, and this is maybe why people are having these very quick spiritual awakenings and completely normal life, and then all of a sudden extreme ET contact that is like almost like harassment at this point. And I think it's because like this urgency, this time is coming, you know, and everyone is becoming aware of this, because this change has to come from inside of us, as opposed to like the overreach. Whereas like if it's from inside, then we know we want the elements of fire still, you know? And when it comes from inside, and I think comes back to like why maybe some ETs or even different types of souls would come in and do it from the inside, because that's also goes back to the holographic model, that like basically the holographic model is a pattern where the whole is in one tiny piece, like the entire world in a grain of sand.
Right. And projects
exactly
in light.
And that's why it has to come from the inside, because for us to change the whole, we only have to change the one grain of sand. So each person, each grain of sand has to do that, and then the whole hologram will change.
And that goes to a very interesting question, the hybrids. The there are so many mixed signals about the hybrids. There is clearly hybridization. Gary Nolan at Stanford University has a laboratory named after him, did an hour interview. The hybrids are real, the genetic proof. But there is a feeling of mixed signals about whether the hybrids are positive or negative. One man in New York, longtime abductee, says that the increasing numbers of hybrids on planet Earth are there now because when the whole thing breaks open, the whole planet is exposed to we're not alone in the universe, that there will be culture shock and that the hybrids have to be there, have to be educated in some way, that they will be the leveler, they will be the calmer. Do you think any of that could be?
I agree. And there's kind of like the concept of like soul hybrids and then physical hybrids. And then also we know that most likely the entire human race is a hybrid to begin with. So I think it's a little crazy for us to be afraid of the hybrids when we're probably a hybrid 10 times over. Personally, I've been interviewing so many people about the hybrids, especially here. I feel, but this might just be my inclination, that I tend to think that whenever we get more information, things are not scary. You hear a bump in the night, you get more information, it's not scary. Yeah. So I think that as we get more information, I do think that most things are for the highest trajectory of our universe. So, of course, it's sad, kind of like to us, it seems like the dying off of something that we are. And that's never, fun for anything.
There's melancholy. Mm-hmm. It is so interesting that what you just said, because the other day I wrote down, what is the melancholy frequency at this time in which it feels like the possibility of nuclear war could happen? The melancholy.
Mm-hmm. And like, I do tend to lean towards the positive in a lot of things, so I don't think it's going to be a nuclear war. I think that would be prevented from us, from our frequency. And I think that's also why it's important what everyone is doing, the work personally, even just interpersonal. They don't need to do, what you're doing. They could just forgive the people in their life who harmed them. Like, just things like that is going to change the frequency of everything, and all the interpersonal stuff, that we really can change the planet in like simple ways of just like, you know what, my parents didn't know any better, and let it go, and I think that really, that's, I think, why there's also some melancholy, is because I think it's all the karma of this planet is getting cleared out right now by us that are here, and I think it's kind of a heaviness from all of history, stuff with all of like the political movements. That's like clearing of old karma from things throughout history that still need to be just apologized and then forgiven.
Well, there's another, I would say, like a door is about to be swung open. I know that there are more than one, but there's one specific Massachusetts lab that is working on nuclear fusion. And they, as far as I know, they've had ET help, but they won't be saying that publicly. And we are so close. I do not know what's holding it back. If they would announce that we could go to solar fusion energy on this planet tomorrow, how many issues, from the drastic changes in the climate and the water problems and all over, it would be like instant new age, right? Mm-hmm. And because I know people working in it, and they say, Linda, it's really there. It's just the question, when is it politically right to emerge?
And they're going to lose that. They're going to lose that privilege soon, because it's like, look, we're doing it now on TikTok. If they're not going to do it, everyone is just starting to do it, and they're going to have to follow at some point, because I post things, and a lot of times people say, like, At this point, I trust the aliens more than the government. You know, they're like, let the aliens win. I hope they take over. They'd probably do it better than we could. So this is where we're at as like, especially like my generation is very like, put the aliens in charge. Give it a try. Look who else we put in charge. It's a mess. Why not have an alien?
Yeah, tall whites, are you listening?
Okay, my final question for you, Linda, is what is your ideal vision for alien disclosure or disclosure, however it would come? Would it come from the government, from the people, from the aliens, in your ideal way that you would love to see it?
I have had a movie, and I see the entire planet's infrastructure of satellite communications so that it could be breaking news in every language, breaking news at the same moment. The whole planet gets breaking news, and that there is the President of the United States, the Prime Minister in Canada, the UK, around the world, as many nations, that they would be the greeters of the breaking news, so it would be global. And then, whether it's the President of the United States or they do it in pieces, they literally say, and now we are going to introduce to you from 82G Eridani, a tall white, as you have heard in some of the work that people have been doing in computers, and they are going to now talk to you through us. Literally. And then have tall white Nordic come up with everybody seeing, the whole world being able to see, and whoever it is that will do the speaking, it will do the automatic words, subtitles. And there would not be a delay for somebody to translate. There would not be overreaching government voice. That's what I'm trying to get across. It would immediately go as fast as possible to those being introduced as allies to the world, not to a specific country. And that if we did subtitles, which I believe can be done simultaneous, digitally, even with a telepathic mind, it would happen at once around the whole planet. And to me, that is critical.
Yeah.
If it is a country, if it is waiting for some sort of a translator, I don't think that's it. It should be spontaneous and huge at the same time.
And just ripple throughout all of reality.
Yes. Yes.
Linda, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. I'm so glad we got to do a longer interview, and I'm looking forward to everything that's in store for us. We're in such an exciting time.
And may Jennifer Carmody continue to keep doing what she's doing.
Oh, thank you, Linda. I appreciate you so much.